we present Why You Feel Older Than You Are. You aged a decade the moment you had to explain to a millennial why you still feel phantom anxiety about missing a phone call, and another decade explaining to a Gen Xer why that even matters. Let's start with what actually defines you. You're not Gen X. You're not a millennial. Researchers have started calling you a microgeneration, people who grew up straddling two completely different worlds. You had a childhood built on analog experiences, then stepped into adulthood right as the digital revolution exploded. And that specific timing created something unusual in your brain that affects how you experience time, identity, and exhaustion. Here's a quick test. You probably still feel a slight anxiety when a phone rings, even though you never answer it. You can read a physical map, but panic when GPS drops for 10 seconds. You show up early to things because there was no way to text someone you were running late when the only option was a landline. You keep a notebook because your brain trusts ink more than cloud storage. Sound familiar? These aren't quirks. These are symptoms of something psychologists are beginning to identify as dual environment cognitive load. Here's the core of it. Brain research shows that the experiences we have roughly between ages 12 and 22 become the foundation for how our minds expect the world to work. That developmental window gets wired deep. For Xennials, that window was split right down the middle. The first half was pre-digital. You foraged for information at libraries. You showed up or you missed out. You were the primary agent of your own outcomes. Then the second half hit and suddenly everything shifted. Information became instant but questionable. Connection became constant but surface level. Your brain had to essentially install a completely new operating system on top of the original one. And those two systems don't always play nicely together. This creates something very specific. You want the stability and clarity of the world you grew up in, but you're competing in the volatility and noise of the digital present. That internal friction is exhausting in a way that's hard to explain to people who didn't live through the transition. Younger generations never knew the before. Older generations can largely opt out. You're stuck translating between two groups who don't even realize they're speaking different languages. And the translation never stops. You build the systems. You manage the teams. You troubleshoot the family Wi-Fi at Thanksgiving dinner. You raise kids who have never been bored without a screen. Then you go camping and feel guilty that you don't feel guilty about being offline. You're never fully comfortable in either world, and that constant negotiation drains something that doesn't replenish overnight. There's another layer to this that gets overlooked. You grew up in what might be the last era of personal forgetting. Your teenage mistakes, your embarrassing phases, your early heartbreaks. They lived in shoeboxes. They weren't indexed or searchable. There was a mercy in that impermanence. Now you inhabit a world where everything is documented, permanent, and potentially public. That shift creates a low-grade hypervigilance that genuinely ages you from the inside. You're monitoring a digital footprint while simultaneously mourning the era when a footprint was just something left in mud. You're also grieving something most people don't have language for. The slow, unobserved afternoons that used to build patience. The long stretches of boredom that forced your imagination to engage. The freedom of being unreachable. You understood what silence felt like before it became anxiety-inducing. You miss a version of human experience that allowed for growth without an audience. And you're doing that grieving in real time, while the world keeps accelerating around you. But here's the reframe that matters. That exhaustion you carry isn't weakness or dysfunction. It's actually evidence of an extraordinary cognitive capability. You can operate with the depth and intentionality of the analog world while navigating digital complexity. You understand what focused work actually produces. You know that genuine stability gets built offline, in routines and relationships in physical spaces. You hold both states simultaneously, and that dual awareness is increasingly rare. The feeling of being older than you are isn't premature aging. It's pattern recognition across two discontinuous systems of living. It's what happens when someone lives through a fundamental phase shift in human experience and retains the memory of both sides. You're not falling behind. You've actually traveled further than most people around you realize. Bridges bear weight. That's what they're designed to do. And you are precisely that, a bridge across one of the most significant transitions in human history. If this finally names something you've been carrying quietly for years, stick around. There's more where this came from, and this conversation is just getting started.